We talk a lot about protective maneuvers on this podcast. In other words, the ways we protect ourselves from getting hurt. Now, remember, we're made for protection as much as we're made for connection. So protection in and of itself is a natural, normal human process. However, when we lean on our protection too much, when we lack the flexibility to drop our protection and move into our vulnerability, then it blocks us from the connection with others we need to provide some of the healing that can happen to reverse some of our trauma. In other words, our protection, it limits us from having new experiences that can actually reverse or at least run contrary to those experiences that caused our trauma in the first place. And that is what our podcast is about today. There's four types of protection that limit our ability to create new experiences and heal our wounds. Welcome to Trauma-Free Relationship. I'm Tom Philp, your host. And as a therapist, I've spent over 10,000 hours working with couples to help them heal their trauma so they can repair their ruptures, heal their wounds, and communicate from a place of wholeness and connection. Let's get started. Okay, as I mentioned in the opening, we're going to talk about today four different types of protection that limits our ability to create more healing experiences for ourselves in connection with others. Now, according to John Gottman, there are four things that couples do, and when they do them chronically or consistently, they've got a 97.5% chance that it will end their relationship in the first 5 years. Now, that's a crazy high prediction rate, but his research has shown that consistently over time. And so those four things that couples do, those four types of protections, can end their relationship more quickly than not. And so those four are defensiveness, criticism, contempt, and stonewalling. Let's break those down. I'm going to turn this on its head just a little bit today, and I want to look at these from the perspective of when we chronically use these types of protections, what it does is it really hurts us. Yes, it hurts the relationship too. Yes, it hurts our partner, but it also really hurts us because it closes us off from the types of experiences we need, those new experiences, those different types of reactions from others in a close, safe, secure relationship that actually can help us heal our traumas. So in no particular order, let's dive into each one of these and see what these are like and how they limit us. The first one, let's talk about criticism. Criticism is simply pointing out anything the other person does wrong. You never think of me. You never consider my feelings. Why did you do it that way? You're so forgetful. I could go on and on and on. We all have received some type of criticism in our relationships. Now, most criticism, is a hard word to say for me today, I guess. Most criticism looks like pointing out everything your partner's doing wrong without any kind of balance. So you're never telling them what they do right. And the real danger here is it pushes your partner away and pushes them into a place where they think, I can never get it right for this person. I can never love them well enough. I can never hit the target of their heart to make them feel good and happy in being with me. Now, if we break this down a little bit into our attachment styles, the criticism is most associated with anxious attachment. This is how the anxious attachment style person is trying to get their needs met by pointing out to their partner what they're doing wrong in the hopes that their partner will wake up, will understand, will hear their heart, will understand their longing and their need for more close and a connected relationship. But what it actually does is it actually pushes their partner away, primarily because more often than not, their partner is somebody who's more of an avoidance style. So all they hear is the criticism. All they hear is, I'm never good enough. I'm not going to measure up. I'm never going to get it right. And so Using criticism chronically in the relationship. And let me pause here and emphasize that word because I think it's really important. When I say chronically, I mean that is sort of your go-to style of communicating, your go-to style of protecting your hurt. When you perceive danger in the relationship, when you perceive your partner wanting to spend more time with their buddies or more times with their girlfriends than with you, then this often comes up for you and you get hurt, and the way you deal with that hurt is to criticize others. And so the big deal about criticism is it does three things. First of all, it blocks what you're really feeling. If you're feeling hurt, but you use criticism to communicate that hurt, there is no way for your partner to be able to understand and speak into that hurt for you, to be able to repair that hurt for you in any way, because all they can do is respond to the criticism. So first of all, it's a defense that we use to block a more painful emotion. The second thing is it creates defensiveness in your partner. Criticism just simply doesn't work. It's not a better form of communication. You're not waking your partner up. You're not really telling them what it is you need and want and desire in the relationship. All you're doing is raising their defenses so that they have to protect themselves. And third, it signals to your partner, it never signals to your partner that they're loving you well. It never tells them what they're getting right. It never creates that balance. All it does is focus on the negative, which throws your partner into this sort of no-win situation no matter what I do. They never get the feedback that, oh my gosh, today when we went to the park and we just held hands and walked around barefoot and this beautiful sun today, and then I laid my head in your lap, that felt tremendous. I felt so close, so connected to you. I love when we can just give each other that sort of undivided quality time. Wow, they would love to hear something like that because they think inwardly, hey, I got it right. I did it right this time. So the problem with criticism is it never tells your partner what they're doing well. It only tells them what they're not doing well. All right, let's talk about contempt. Contempt is when we treat others with disrespect, we mock them with sarcasm, ridicule, call them names, or we mimic them with the use of body language such as eye rolling or scoffing or something along those lines. This is particularly heinous. When I see contempt in a relationship, and I certainly have seen my fair share of it with couples that I've treated, it is particularly toxic to the relationship. And if it has gone on for quite some time in the relationship, then I'll tell you, it is a hard place to come back to. Now, the way I work with criticism is that I try to validate the hurt and the pain behind the individual that's using the contempt. Pardon me, I said criticism, I meant contempt. Because what's really happening is this is their sort of go-to move when they're hurt, when they feel rejected or abandoned, when their trauma's been triggered. This is what they do to push other people away. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy because deep down they hold these beliefs that no one's going to stay with me, or I'm unlovable, or I'm going to be left anyway. And so when they get those trauma triggers and when they perceive that threat of possible abandonment, this is their go-to move. And so they name call, they ridicule, they mock, they might cuss at their partner, not just cuss in general, but cuss at them. And this is particularly toxic to the relationship. It often comes from a place of wanting to hurt another person because they're hurting so deeply themselves. Now, it doesn't look like it on the surface. When our partner uses contempt, it doesn't look like they're hurting because often contempt is masked with a sort of superiority over others. It looks like they're taking the moral high ground or they're better than others, but that is just an illusion because inwardly what's happening is they are so shamed or they are so fearful that this is the only way they know how to handle it. And so it comes at an expense of their own hurt. It's often that I can see in my clinical work with couples, it's often derived by a model that was shown to them by their own caretakers. Maybe this is something they saw in their own family, that you kind of go for the throat when you feel hurt or slighted or shamed or offended in any way. And so you sort of, come out with the knives, so to speak, metaphorically, of course, and try to really cut your partner deep. And so I've seen it oftentimes where when I'm able to get an individual that uses contempt to soften, they can reflect on, this is the way my family handled conflict. This is the way they repaired ruptures, or actually they didn't repair them, but this is what happened when there were ruptures in the relationship. And so it's almost somewhat normalized for them. They don't think about it as being toxic. They think about them as being tough. They think about them as having thick skin. And why can't their partner just buck up? Don't they know that they don't always mean it? They're just angry at the moment, but they really don't see how toxic that can be. So contempt, there's just no place for it in ruptures. There's no place for it in our dialogue with our partner, and it should never show up in my experience, because it only goes bad when it does. All right, let's talk about defensiveness, another way that will really block our ability to create new experiences. Obviously, with contempt, I'm going back one now. If we put down our partner, if we mock our partner, if we ridicule them, man, there is no way our partner is going to feel safe showing up for us. There is no way our partner is going to feel like it's okay to soften and to be vulnerable with us in order to give us any kind of different experience, in order to try to reverse our trauma. And so that's pretty obvious. But now we're talking about defensiveness, and defensiveness clearly there's a place for that too, because if our partner's constantly defensive, what it looks like is they never take responsibility for their actions or their words. Anytime we might come to them, even if we come to them without being critical or contemptuous, if we come to them in a soft way, hey, this hurt my feelings. Well, what it feels like we often get is justification for their behavior. Well, I only did that because you did this. Well, you don't understand the stress that I'm under. So it's just constant excuses. And what it is the lack of any responsibility for their words or their actions. Now, let me say, every couple gets defensive from time to time. It's probably one of the most used forms of protection. But when we lean on our defensiveness consistently, then we never let our partner see us vulnerable or take responsibility, as I said, for our words and actions. And remember, vulnerability is the royal road to connection. We can't be in connection with another human being without being somewhat open and vulnerable. So being defensive usually means we are feeling attacked and criticized, but instead of expressing we feel attacked, we respond with criticism or defensiveness, hopefully never contempt. So yes, when we put up our defenses and we get defensive, it's a lack of responsibility. Oftentimes it's because we're feeling attacked, but oftentimes it's because there's an inability on a partner's part to be able to sit with their partner's feelings and empathize and understand without trying to distort, take away, change, or simply try to make that person feel better. Being able to just hold space for that person's feelings, being able to just sit with those feelings long enough and say, gosh, you know what? I am so sorry that I said that, because I know how much that probably hurt you. And I can see you're hurting now. And I just really regret my words. And I'm going to really try to never go to that place again. I'm going to try to express to you when I'm feeling attacked and hurt, so that I don't come back and attack you, or I don't use criticism back, or I just don't get defensive and constantly make excuses, because that's not where I want us to be in our relationship. So being able to take responsibility for your words and your actions, being able to sit with your partner's feelings long enough that they don't feel like they're just getting a bunch of excuses, or simply being able to communicate your behavior only in response to their behavior or what they did, then that opens up a space for the couple to be able to reconnect and to be able to connect in a way that could give one partner, or perhaps possibly even both partners, the ability to experience something different. Maybe the family they grew up in, maybe in their first marriage, their partner was constantly defensive. They could never get their partner to take responsibility. So imagine what it would be like if they were to come to you and you were actually able to sit and listen to them and actually empathize with their feelings and take accountability for whatever it was you did. Whether you meant to or didn't mean to, the fact that you're just taking accountability could in and of itself be something revolutionary for that person. All right, the last one we're going to talk about is stonewalling, which is usually a response to contempt, although it can certainly be a response to criticism as well. Stonewalling occurs when the listener withdraws from the interaction. They can shut down, they can physically leave the room, or they can just emotionally disconnect. They simply stop responding to their partner. They don't know what to say, no words come out. They might look blank. They might have a lot of fear behind their eyes because they don't want to make it worse. But whatever the reasons, they just simply shut down and not respond. And again, we may stonewall from time to time in our relationships. I mean, I look at my relationship, and there's certainly times where I didn't know what to say to my partner. I might have needed a little more time to think it out. But then what happens is I might come back and I might re-engage. And I say, hey, I want to follow up on our conversation. So that's not stonewalling. Taking some time to think about it, communicating to your partner, I don't know what to say here, but I'm going to need some time. I will come find you when I figure this out, and we can continue this conversation. That is huge to your partner who might be more anxious attached, and stonewalling oftentimes falls more in the more avoidant style of attachment. Not always, but it can. Exhausted pursuers can certainly get to the point where they can stonewall their partner because they just are so exhausted from trying to get the connection and feeling like they're failing at it over and over. So it can be both, but it's more often aligned with more avoidant styles of attachment. But being able to communicate that to your partner, hey, I need some time here to think this through. Let's continue this conversation later. I'll come find you. That in itself could be huge for your anxious partner because it feels like that then all the burden's not on them to make this relationship work, that they've got a willing partner to come and engage. But if you just shut down and stop and never engage, then that is stonewalling. And if you've ever seen the still face studies on YouTube by Ed Tronick, I encourage you to watch those. It shows you exactly what happens to, in this particular case, a mother and a child when the mother gave the child a still face. We don't do well with non-responsive partners. When our partner is unresponsive, unengaged, we don't sit well with that. We need engagement of some kind. And so stonewalling really just hurts the relationship. And again, it blocks our ability to be able to create the new experiences we need in our relationship that allows us to be able to try to reverse, try to heal, try to teach our body and our brain that at least some people in our lives are not going to respond the way that the original response that created our trauma was given or had occurred in our previous relationships. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast today. These are 4 ways that I think really limit our ability to create new experiences that can help heal our trauma. Hopefully you can take these 4 things we've outlined today and you can look at them in your relationship and take one at a time and just simply begin to try to be less defensive, begin to try to criticize less. That way you can speak from your own experiences, your own feelings, In order to reverse criticism, don't focus so much on what your partner's doing. Focus on the impact it's having on you. Hopefully weed out any kind of contempt that's happening in the relationship whatsoever. And of course, if you find that you're shutting down and stonewalling, try to stay engaged in that relationship longer so that you can be more responsive to your partner. Hey, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, we'll talk to you then.
Thank you for listening to Trauma Free Relationship, a podcast for the healing of attachment trauma. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or our website at traumafreerelationship.com. Be sure to look for our next episode on your favorite streaming service.